Hello, beautiful. Today we're going to be talking about the book summary of Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tawabb. It teaches readers how to stand up for themselves and set limits with others to achieve a fulfilling life. The book provides a clear formula for identifying boundary issues, communicating the need for boundaries, and following through with action. So, reading this book, you will learn how to say no and improve relationships with co-workers, partners, friends, and family. So, get ready to learn how to say no and enjoy fulfilling relationships with co-workers, partners, family, and friends. So, do you need boundaries in your life? People often seek therapy for conflicts, self-care, time management, and concerns about social media. However, boundary problems are rarely acknowledged. These issues are often the result of boundary violations and can be solved by learning to communicate boundaries. Establishing boundaries in relationships is important because we often agree to do things for others that are not in our best interest, such as lending money for favor or doing favors when we don't have time. It's a lifelong skill that requires practice. Being honest about your expectations and limitations can prevent conflicts and heartache. It is important to communicate your wishes clearly to others. Before you start learning how to set boundaries, you should determine whether you actually have boundary issues. According to Tawabb, the most common signs that you need boundaries are feelings of resentment toward people for asking for your help, the need to avoid phone calls and interactions with people you think might ask for something, frequent comments about helping people and getting nothing in return, feeling burnt out, frequent daydreams about dropping everything and disappearing, the lack of time for yourself. Setting boundaries is the root of self-care. Boundaries are expectations and needs that help you feel safe and comfortable in relationships. The lack of boundaries can lead to mental and emotional distress, as is in the case of Tawabb's patient Kim. Kim was overwhelmed and exhausted from trying to do everything perfectly and always saying yes to others. Tawabb helped Kim realize that setting boundaries was the solution rather than improving time management skills. Like many other people who have boundary issues, Kim could not see the difference between the things she really had to do and the things she could delegate. She thought the only way to help others was to say yes to doing everything herself. But did Kim's friend really need her help with moving? Or could she find someone else? Was Kim obliged to assist her colleague with the project? Perhaps she could give him some pieces of advice and let him do the rest without her assistance. When we get caught up in our desire to help others, by all means, we eventually become overwhelmed, depressed, anxious, or resentful. On the flip side, healthy boundaries makes us feel safe, loved, calm, and respected, and this is because they are, in Tawabb's words, the root of self-care. Setting boundaries indeed is not easy, especially when others refuse to acknowledge them by being ignorant, defensive, or passive-aggressive. Nevertheless, despite how others react to your refusal to do them a favor, do not be sorry about setting boundaries, and by no means do not give up on them. After all, if someone does not respect your needs, even after you repeat them several times, they're probably not worth being part of your life. Handling people's responses to your boundaries. The fear about how someone might respond to your boundaries or other boundaries might hold us back. Therefore, in this section, we will reveal several techniques that might help you deal with undesirable reactions effectively. Number 1. Handling pushback. People will often try to disrespect your boundaries by saying things such as, "This is not fair," or "I have things I need to do too, but I'm not making you change." If you face pushback, acknowledge that you heard the other person's concern and then restate the boundary you initially set by saying, for instance, "I understand that you don't like my boundary, but I need limits because they help me feel safe." Number 2, handling limit testing. After you state your boundaries, many people will want to see whether your decision is firm. So my perspective is kids do this a lot to see if you have it. So they'll keep testing the boundaries just to see in which container or where it stops and where it fits in. So moving back to the verb, say you tell your friend you cannot help them move. If they decide to test your limits, they will ask, "Well, what about next week?" In this case, be open and tell them they are pushing your boundaries and explain how their behavior makes you feel. Number 3, handling ignoring. If people pretend they did not hear you, say no to their request. Restate your boundaries one more time and ask them to repeat back what you stated. The amount of misunderstanding or misinformation is incredible, so I love the repeating back what you stated, even for other situations in communication. It's just wonderful. It's brilliant. Step 4, handling, rationalizing, and questioning. Why can't you help? You know I would help you in a similar situation. This is the type of response you might hear after expressing your needs. Now, do not be tempted to answer this question, as it will likely lead you to offer excuses and apologies. Just respond shortly by saying something like, "This is what's healthy for me." Number 5, handling defensiveness. After hearing about your boundaries, many people will become defensive and try to make everything about them. To handle defensiveness, concentrate on your needs and feelings. Use I statements and the following sentence pattern. When you, I feel. Number 6, handling ghosting and silent treatment. Ghosting is an unhealthy response to boundaries and includes not answering your calls or texts or canceling plans with you. A less extreme response is silent treatment. When a person does not answer your calls, does answer your calls, but acts distant. Either way, you should let them know how their behavior makes you feel. Also, explain once again that you set the boundary because you felt overwhelmed, exhausted, anxious, and so on. Types of boundaries. You cannot stand up for yourself unless you learn the types of boundaries you deserve to have. Therefore, let's identify 6 areas of boundaries and learn about the ways to honor them. Number 1, physical boundaries. Your personal space, the perimeter around your body, and physical touch represent your physical boundaries. Frequently, your preferences about them will differ from those of other people. Therefore, you should let them know whether someone is standing too close or touches you in a way you find inappropriate. Here are a few examples of how you might set physical boundaries. Please move back a little. Or it makes me feel uncomfortable when you rub my back. Number 2, sexual boundaries. Violation of sexual boundaries includes touching, making sexual comments, or engaging in sexual acts without consent. Always let the other person know what your sexual boundaries are by saying something like, "Move your hand off my leg," or "Your comment isn't funny, it's sexually inappropriate." Furthermore, you should report sexual misconduct whenever you experience or witness it. Number 3, intellectual boundaries. Whenever someone makes fun of your ideas and thoughts or forbids you to express your beliefs and opinions, they violate your intellectual boundaries. In these situations, you should make them aware of their behavior and explain how it makes you feel. Number 4, emotional boundaries. People are violating your emotional boundaries when they belittle or invalidate your feelings. To take care of your emotional boundaries, let them know their comments make you feel uncomfortable and hesitant to share your emotions. Number 5, material boundaries. Have you ever lent someone something to your friend, for example, and they returned it in a worse condition or way after the deadline was set? Perhaps they did not return it at all. Well, in those cases, they violated your material boundaries. According to Tawabb, you have every right to tell others how they should treat your possessions. After all, you also have the right not to share your stuff with others if you don't feel like it. Number 6, time boundaries. Time boundaries consist of how you manage your time and how you allow others to use it. To honor your time boundaries, you should, for instance, check your calendar before you say yes to a request, or turn your cell phone when you cannot or don't want to respond. Work on your assertiveness. Tawabb says being assertive is the healthiest way to communicate your boundaries. It involves expressing your feelings openly without hurting others. When someone is assertive, they, number 1, say no to anything they don't want to do. Number 2, tell people how they feel as a result of their behavior. Number 3, share their honest thoughts about their experiences. Number 4, talk directly to the person they have issues with. Number 5, make their expectations clear up front instead of letting others figure them out. So working on boundaries means working on your ability to be assertive. Say your friend asks you to go to a party you don't want to attend. To refuse them assertively, say, "Thanks for the invite, but I'll sit this one out." Or say you want to tell your friend you cannot listen to their complaints about their work anymore. You would do it in this way. "Listen, I get that your job is frustrating. I want you to consider talking to someone in human resources or meeting with someone through your employee assistance program to talk about your frustrations." Assertiveness is about being